As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts grey, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing their ancient call for bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits knew. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring the greater days. For the rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler tender toil where one reposes, but the sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses.
Lena, thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. So just moving on, I would now like to invite one of the founding members of this memorial garden, Jerry Adams, to come forward, and Jerry is going to read us a poem, Macalla, mBán. Jerry wrote this poem at the time that the garden originally opened in 2007. Gormy of it, Jerry.
Seo Macalla mBán agus scríbme an Dan Garrett Shaw, our son Siobhan O'Hanlon, our cara. So Macalla mBán, Stragolch mBán, Kenu mBán, Folinch mBán, Niart mBán, Vaithnia mBán, Farag mBán, Douglas mBán, Ceol mBán, Cree mBán, Crack mBán, Gaira mBán, Carjas mBán, Ahas mBán, Gra mBán, Teki mBán, Saoirse mBán.
In 2007, a group of women and male activists came together to discuss the creation of this beautiful garden of remembrance for women. And the purpose of this garden was to ensure that we would never forget the many roles that women played throughout our struggle. And it was hoped then that this beautiful garden would be a place where everybody could spend time, maybe in reflection, or perhaps looking at the names of the women they've known and loved, or simply just to come here and think a bit of time for themselves. The Macalla and mBán project was born from love, determination and pride to remember all of those women whose memories we hold dear. And for that, on behalf of the many, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all. So Gormila Magov Bulabas. In 2007, Sue Ramsey and Sinead Walsh spoke to the Andy Town News, and they said, along with other women and men, they were inspired to create a memorial garden after the untimely death of our comrade Siobhan O'Hanlon, a political ex-prisoner and a lifelong activist. Sue and Sinead told the Andy Town News that, and I quote, "We reflected on how so many women throughout the country had sacrificed so much for so many years. And female activists had indeed made sacrifices, and I don't want to single anything out in particular, but rather outline only some of those sacrifices. So they were revolutionary soldiers, they were householders, they fed and clothed people, doing without themselves in many circumstances. They held down at least one job. They were prisoners, they were mothers, they were sisters, they were lovers. They visited prisons throughout Ireland, England and abroad. They were agitators, they were activists, they erected barricades, they broke down walls. They were scholars, musicians, they were keepers of secrets. They were poets, historians, nurses, cleaners, artists and so much more. They were the very best of us. I'm a typical Belfast Republican woman. I give off about women being written out of history, and yet I'm so reluctant to talk about my own history. All I can say for now is I had the privilege of growing up in Carrickhill, surrounded by very strong women. In that area, and probably like many working class areas, women still called each other by their own names. Some of them were political with small p's, and many of them were political with capital P's. But one thing they all had in common, they all knew firsthand about discrimination and the rottenness of the Orange State that we grew up in and lived in. Those women, like so many others across Ireland, worked so hard for their families and for their communities, all while living in overcrowded housing, trying to make ends meet. And they were campaigners, they were mighty, and above all else, I remembered how they looked after each other as best they could and looked after each other's kids. No one would ever refuse to keep an eye on the kids, as you never knew when you might need that support yourself. I also grew up in the company of women who also loved the crack. They loved their Wednesday night teas in each other's houses, and I often wondered why they were called tea nights when not a drop of tea was ever made. But somehow they all ended up loving, laughing, dancing and singing to Kathleen Largy, Connie Francis, Dusty Springfield songs, all half-cut or fully lit on Barry tea. One of the biggest lessons that was instilled in me was always to try and do what's right for then, for now, and for those coming behind me. And that same ethos followed me from Regent Street in Carrickhill to McGabry Jail and back home again. And thinking back, it was never easy for any of us. A wise comrade once told me, when I had a big busted crime face, ranting about everything and anything, and he said, "That's why it's called struggle, Carl, it's not supposed to be easy." And I just says, "Oh, fuck off, Ted." Anyway, it was never easy for anyone. No one ever got things because they deserved them. They got things done, and that was in spite of all the obstacles put in front of them. They didn't wish for change, they worked for it. There have been occasions recently when I hear my youngest granddaughter speak, and I wonder what she will think of all this. Well, our Raina understand? Will she be horrified, shocked? Will she think of me and my comrades differently? Who knows? But hopefully, as the cliche goes, she will see that we were all just ordinary working class women living in extraordinary times who refused to stand by and accept our lot. The names of women in this garden and the many that have since passed since the garden was built all have their own histories and stories. They sacrificed so much, and for that we will be eternally grateful to them. They made sure that women were seen, and more importantly, they made sure that women were heard. Some of the women we remember were revolutionary soldiers, trade unionists, elected activists, so much more and then some, but their activism was in the context of ending partition. It was to ensure that justice and equality was felt by everyone. They were warriors in an arena of misogyny, and many of them, as we know, would knock your pan in. But they were also the rocks upon which many of our homes were built. They had families, they nurtured us, and they sowed the seeds of future revolutionary women. They were strong, they were beautiful, supportive, and then some, but above all else, they were determined to ensure that the names of the women we loved and lost were whispers and roars. I often think about the journey that many have made. The same ethos here is the same ethos then, and hopefully until it happens. And that was about bringing an end to partition, to end poverty, to promote equality and break glass ceilings. So, we are still determined to end partition. We are still determined to end poverty. We are still determined to ensure equality is at the core of everything we do, regardless of what language you speak and regardless of who you love. Níl muid janta go fáil, we are not done yet. I want to say thank you to the Rodaí McCorlaís for having this garden, and to all our activists, particularly those in Upper Andersonstown and Lenadoon, for the upkeep of this garden, and for those who consistently fundraise for it. I particularly want to thank Macalla and mBán for the decades of hard work, and I want to finish with a few lines from a Beatles song. I'm not going to sing it, so don't worry about that. That's Clena's job. But these words always remind me of the women that I knew and loved. Sounds of laughter, shades of life are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love, which shines around me like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. Gur mila mila magav.